Don't be afraid to submit offers that are under market price. If they're not insulting, they're not low enough.
Real estate cash is king. You don't have to go through the hoops of getting appraisals and the long process of closing.
I would recommend getting your first property and learning how to manage it yourself, just so that you understand what goes into managing a property. If the deal doesn't pencil out, don't force it. There's going to be other deals out there. But as far as rates go, I don't think they're going to go down.
Awesome. Welcome to another episode of the Agent to Investor podcast, where we talk about the agent side of real estate investing. We'll be talking about the successes, the failures, and all in between. My name is Nico Garcia, local real estate agent and investor based out of Montgomery County, Maryland. And as always, I'm joined by my co-host,
Anna Bialik, Northern Virginia realtor and mostly out-of-state investor.
Mm-hmm. And today we have a fun episode, just Anna and I think it's been quite a while. Since it's just been you and me. And I know we took a little bit of a hiatus on vacation, but I'm very happy to, be back and talking to you. And I hope all is well with you, Anna. But we wanted to make an episode because we put out a feeler on social media and on our comments and things like that. We wanted to hear from the audience. We wanted to have you guys ask us some questions about real estate, about, anything really, generally. And we had some great questions come in. So today will be kind of like a Q&A question episode, and we'll kind of just go off the top, Anna. So we did have a comment come in asking, how did you get started in real estate and how did you scale your rental portfolio? So I think this is a good one to start off. So I'll let you tee it off, Anna.
I was like, all right, how much time do we have? I'm like, so now I think this is also a good way to reintroduce ourselves to like our audience if they've joined us and they don't know a whole lot about us. So I actually got started, so I worked for the Department of Navy for 20 years, which of course. But if people didn't know that, I used to be a Department of Defense employee. That's how I met my husband, Brian. Did that for 20 years, realized I didn't want to keep doing that forever. And then I had a friend, her husband worked with Brian at the Navy Yard. We had dinner one day. I met her for the first time. She used to work for the government, became a real estate agent, and was doing pretty well for herself. And I was like, I could do that. And Brian knew I wasn't happy at my W-2 job. And we created a plan. And he said, I think you could do this real estate thing. And I think you'd be good at it. So go get your license. So that's how I got into real estate to start with, was to get out of my W-2 job. And then I realized, I'm like, holy cow, I'm still working for money. That's what I wanted to get away from, was working for money until I'm like 85. And being a real estate agent, you can make really good money. But if you don't do anything with that money to generate more money, you're going to end up basically working and opening doors and having open houses until they carry you out of the house. Because Once you stop working, there's no money. So I read a book. I love reading. I've said this before in other podcasts. We've talked about this book like constantly, but I came across, don't know how, a book called The Cash Flow Breakfast Club. And I read it and I was like, wow, it was an easy read. We've talked about it before. It's about a real estate agent who makes money and lives out of their car because they don't know how to build wealth. And I was like, this is it. This is it. I love real estate, but I want something that I'm going to be able to build and that I can go off and live this life that I am dreaming about. And so after stalking online for a little while, because his bio in the back of the book said he lives in Loudoun County. And I was like, he lives in Northern Virginia. Oh my gosh. He expanded. He had a meetup in Loudoun and then he opened one up in Fairfax, which was closer to us. So I signed up. I told Brian, hey, I signed us up for this real estate investing thing. I don't know what it's going to be about exactly, but the book was good. And I don't know, should we go? Maybe not. I've told the story before. We went, Brian's, let's sit by the door. So when they start selling us for the low price of $1 million, we'll tell you all our secrets. And the sales pitch never came. It was a fantastic community. We're now part of that community. You are as well. And those have become some of our closest friends. You guys are some of our closest friends. And so that's what started us down that path. And then we started buying properties. And I don't know, did you ask me the question of how we started buying properties?
Yeah. Talk about the question was, how did you scale your rental portfolio? Because a lot of people, they think real estate is unachievable especially in our area. So the question was, how did you end up building to where you are today?
Yes. So to be fair, that's why I'm mostly out of state investing, was because of the price points in our area. So before we became true investors, we did buy an investor property. We bought a beach house in North Carolina. It was our COVID house. And we're like, this is a great investment property, but we didn't treat it like an investment. So we were what a lot of people call accidental landlords or accidental investors. And we were not capitalizing on that. So we realized we needed to change the format for that house and kind of like actually rent it out on a regular basis for it to start generating income. But as far as scaling the other parts of the portfolio, it was a combination of Brian still has a W-2 job. So in some cases, we were able to get a loan, an investment loan with his W-2 income to use him as the person to get the loan. And the other big asset that we have is our primary residence, which we've owned for 20 plus years. And we have a ton of equity in, but we didn't want to refinance because we have a little bit of a mortgage left, but like 2.5% interest rate, which I didn't want to give up. So we ended up getting a HELOC, which for those that don't know is a home equity line of credit. It goes and it basically taps into that equity. We shopped around for a couple different banks because different banks offer different terms, but essentially it's like a credit card on your house that you can pull money and use it. And you pay interest only payments, or at least we do, on this line of credit. And then we can pay it back and then basically use it again for the next 10 years. So we used it to pay for some of the houses that we have out in Ohio when it was like a $100,000 house. We bought it cash using the HELOC. And then we refinanced those properties into DSCR loans, debt service coverage ratio loans, which are commercial loans that are based off of the income the property makes. And then we were able to pay the HELOC back. So that's how we were able to economically, like at least money wise, how we were able to scale as quickly as we did.
Yeah, the HELOC is such a powerful tool. And I know you and Brian have used it a ton and using it as a short-term bridge loan, right? You have all this equity and you're able to buy properties out of state cash. And in real estate, cash is king. You don't have to go through the hoops of getting appraisals and the long process of closing. You can say, hey, I'll buy this property cash. It's appealing to sellers. You're able to essentially do the Burr method. And I know we talked a little bit off camera. So you're using that, and then you're refinancing and paying, basically using your home as like a piggy bank, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it is. And you don't pay on the line of credit unless you're using it. So if we pay it all back and we're not going to buy a house for a couple months, it's not like you're making monthly interest payments on having the line of credit, which is also, for us, it was better than getting a new mortgage on the property that we would still have to be paying interest on that money, even if we weren't utilizing it.
Such a powerful tool, and definitely reach out to Anna if you have questions about how much equity you have in your home and see if it even makes sense, because a lot of people are sitting on a tremendous amount of equity, especially after the pandemic, and using that as a tool to buy rental properties can really help scale.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Especially if you've owned your house for a while and have paid down quite a bit of the mortgage, which is what our case was. In that case, a lot of lenders are willing to lend up to a certain percentage, depends on the bank, 60, 70, 80% of the equity. It's still, in a lot of cases, a couple $100,000 that you can tap into, depending on which market you're in.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, we'll definitely talk more about the DSCR and the HELOCs as well. But I'll briefly answer that question as well.
Yeah, your turn. So wait, now I need to ask you the question for the clip to make sense.
How I got started. Similar to Anna, we were both agents before we became investors. I got licensed back in 2020, right around the pandemic, which was a fun time to get licensed, right? Nobody wants you in their home. Interest rates were historically low. And as a newer agent, you're mostly working with buyers, going against 10, 20 offers, learned a ton. And I still work. Both of us still work as agents, still love helping people buy, sell, invest here in the DMV. But in talking about the investing world, so 2023, I really got interested, also read that book. So Anna's been an integral part of me getting into the investing world. She introduced me to the Cash Flow Breakfast Club. I was learning things at these meetups that, I didn't learn in my pre-licensing course as an agent. I was hearing all these creative ways on how you can buy properties, and I was mind blown, really. So I was just interested. I was listening to Bigger Pockets, reading all these books, spec here, trying to figure out how I can buy properties. And 2023, we came with an off-market deal through a relationship that we have, and we bought it. Didn't really know what the heck we were doing, right? My brother and I bought it. Hindsight, I was like, I would do so many things differently, but I knew it was a good deal. Being an agent for 3 years, I knew what the prices were in the market. We were able to get it below market value. Needed a little bit of work. So I leveraged my dad, who is a contractor, and we were able to get it at a good discount. And since then, really doubled down on the investing world, started building relationships at these meetups, building relationships with private money lenders to help me scale to, we currently have 3 rental properties, working on a fix and flip currently. So to answer the question, I know Anna used her HELOC and relationships with other agents out of state. I would say what really helped me scale is private money and using partners to help you scale. And that comes with time, building we could talk about credibility packages and things like that to help you stand out and be somebody with integrity. But that's really been transformative in how we were able to scale our business.
I love that. And then I'm thinking about it. I was like, wait, we introduced you to RPM too. I've been your gateway drug to real estate investing.
Anna's been the coach. She's been helping me out get to where we are today. Yeah, no, I don't know if I've told you this, but yeah, you've been very instrumental in helping us grow. So
I just realized that. I was like, wait a minute. I was like, I love it because now you're like a coach in the community. Like you lead your own chapter of the Cash Flow Breakfast Club. You're now a coach in the RPM community, which is Coach Carson's. So you've taken it and run with it. But it just, as you're saying that, I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah, I always consider myself, I love coaching, right? Similar to Coach Carson. I coached soccer. I still play soccer. And I love like everything that I know. I always want to teach it to somebody that's maybe a step behind or in the beginning stages. You and I, we have a few rental properties. And both of us feel like we're still in the beginner phase because we know all these people that have tons of properties. But at the end of the day, we could be helping out people that are looking to buy their first property, scale to their second property. How did we do it? Because we both use different methods on how to do it. Any way that I can pay it forward, which is why I lead the Cash Flow Breakfast Club. I'm doing like an action team in our other community. I always want to do it because what better way to learn something is knowing that you're going to have to teach it, right?
Yeah, that's so true. We had our chapter of the Cash Flow Breakfast Club this past Wednesday. And one of the people at the end came up and he was like, I don't understand. Why do you do this? Like, why do you do it for free? What do you get out of this? Do you get paid? And I was like, no, not at all. And then I looked at him and I was like, I do it because somebody did it for us. If someone didn't do this meeting and do it for free because we didn't have the money to sign up for $10,000 community at the time, like I wouldn't have gotten into real estate investing if someone hadn't done it for me. So that's why. And so that's an interesting thought process. But I want to jump back and ask you one of the questions that we had talked about before, and you mentioned it again. So if you could go back, I know we're still pretty new on this whole investing journey, but if you could go back 2 or 3 years to when you first started, what would you do differently? What have you learned now? What do you know now that you wish you would have known then that you would have done differently?
Yeah. I hear we ask this question to every guest, right? And now that I'm thinking about it, I'm like, I don't know if I do anything different. I like, failing forward and learning as you go. Because if you do a mistake, it's not really a mistake, it's a learning lesson. But to answer your question, when I first I worked with clients as landlord clients to help them tenant qualification. So I knew a little bit about it. But when we actually put our property up, for whatever reason, I didn't do it as I do with my other clients. I was like, okay, they say they get paid this or something like that. Obviously, they put applications in, but I didn't do it as thorough as I do now. And after hearing some horror stories from, I don't want to put you on the spot, but from other people, other investors, I'm like, man, I really could have shot myself in the foot for that. We lucked out and our tenants are still there for that first property. But moving forward, I have a pretty strict vetting process of getting people because I'm in Maryland. It's very tenant friendly state. So once they're in there, tenants have their rights. So you want to make sure you're doing your due diligence up front. Now you can still do your due diligence and still get, unfortunately, a bad apple. But yeah, what I knew now, I definitely would have did things a little bit different when I first started.
Yeah, you've gotten so lucky. I feel like I'm pretty much neck and neck, but for some reason I step in it right before you do. And I'm like, guess what happened? And you're like, let me step over it.
I like to think I learned a lot from you. And also for like my older brother, just growing up, you learn a lot from like other people's experiences and what not to do. And not saying that you did things wrong, but actually I'll just reverse the question to you. So what are some, put you on the spot, right? What are some things you wish you knew before you got into the investing world?
I was going to say the sibling thing makes sense because I tell everybody you're like the little brother that I never had. So I'm
right.
like that.
That's right.
So I agree with you. Like, I think everything has led us to where we are now. I say that all the time, that everything happens for a reason. And so I would be a different person if I didn't go through all of these things that I have been through. I guess if I could go back, and something I would do probably differently, just for the sake of my own sanity, is I hear it now all the time. And it's like, why didn't I hear this 2 or 3 years ago? Like, start building and documenting your systems like right now. Like when you're putting up a listing, write it down, or talk to ChatGPT as you're like filling stuff out, so you have it written out. Because I mean, even now there's some things that I only do once a month or once every couple of months. And every single time I have to go back and be like, how do I do that? I have to like Google search and be like, how do I create this billing statement? How do I do this other thing? And how did I recreate that? So I would say documenting things like upfront, even if you only have one property. Like, some of these things you do so infrequently, but you will have to do again, that it takes so much time and brain power to try to remember how you did it the last time. When if I would have written it down and taken the 10 minutes to write it down, I would have saved myself so much heartache and so much time and effort. So that's one thing, is documenting things out of the gate to make life easier.
Can I comment on that, Anna? Yeah. So, we had Grace and Amelia on a few episodes before, and they talk about SOPs, standard operating procedures. And I think you're spot on, Anna, because that once you get in real estate, you want to eventually delegate all the things that you're doing so it can become more passive, right? So how are you going to do that if you're not documenting and knowing exactly what it takes to put a listing up, right? All the different steps that you do as an agent. I'm just like you, Anna. You just go through it and you don't even really think about it. But down the road, I know you just got your broker's license. Eventually, you want to delegate some things, right? And how are you going to delegate if you don't actually know exactly and have it in black and white of what you're doing? So I agree with that 100%.
Yeah. And I'll say, do as I say, not as I do, because I'm still like, I know I'm supposed to be doing it, and I still struggle with doing it on a daily basis, because there are so many, I'll say, fires that pop up and, oh, today I'm going to work on a stop. And then I get a phone call because all the smoke alarms are going off in the house, or the HVAC isn't working over here, or someone's freaking bathtub is clogged, which if I had stops, maybe it'd be easier like to deal with all of those like little things. So I will say, I know I need to do it. I started working on it slowly. And even now, I am not perfect by any means in actually achieving that goal, but I know it's there. I'm working on it. The other thing I was going to say is, one thing I learned early on, or at least what I heard early on, was like, oh, buy a property, get a property manager. The one thing I would tell new investors now is, I would recommend getting your first property and learning how to manage it yourself, just so that you understand what goes into managing a property. So you know what to expect of your property managers when you're vetting them in the future. Because we didn't know what we were doing. We had like a generic list of questions. We hired a property manager because that's what we thought we were supposed to do. And we paid a lot of like time, money, heartache, just by not understanding how to manage a property ourselves. And it's taken a year and a half, 2 years to like get to the point where like now I am managing it myself. And some of the stuff I can do better, faster myself with the technology we have. And if and when we do decide to pick up a new property manager in the future, I have these standard operating procedures. I know what I expect from them. I know what like my like criteria is for a property manager now. I didn't know that in the beginning, and that was a very painful lesson.
One of those things that you don't really know until you go through it. And I know
until it hits you in the face.
And you're mainly out of state, right? So you're relying on people that are market experts, with quotations, right? I agree 100%. You want to know how to self-manage, what makes a good property manager. And then that way you can delegate, you can ask the questions about with these property managers before you actually hire them, so you don't have those hiccups down the road.
Yeah, because I had no criteria for how to vet tenants. I had no like tenant criteria. I had no expectations of like, I had like pie in the sky. I want you to manage my properties and find good tenants and collect the rent. And that was it. But it was definitely a learning experience. But like I said, that's how I got to where I am now. So now I hope that other people can learn from it and not have to go through it, because I'm telling you, don't do it.
For sure. So I have a question for you, and I'm not exactly sure what channel this came in from, but we may have talked about it before. We're called the Agent to Investor podcast, and it's a 2-part question. I get a lot of people that say, hey, should I get my license when I'm looking to get into real estate or real estate investing? And the second part for the question is, why don't you think more agents invest in real estate? Because I can't remember the percentage off the top of my head, but it's a very small amount of real estate agents that actually own rental properties. So what would you say to those people that are looking to get their license?
For the license, honestly, I think it depends. I will say I think it's very person specific. If you have a full-time W-2 job and your significant other has a full-time, if you have one has a full-time W-2 job, and you want to have the market expertise of an agent that's going to help you, like a true investor agent that's going to help you like find the properties and do all that stuff, then maybe it's not worth getting your license, at least not at that point. And that's my opinion, because I think there is a lot of time and effort you've got to put into taking the classes, paying for the tests, paying for all the fees to be an agent in general. There's like annual fees. So you're paying a couple $1,000s a year just to be an agent with all the different associations and things that you have to do. So I think in that regard, then maybe it's not worthwhile. But then if you are doing fix and flips and you realize, hey, my agent isn't selling the house the way that I would like it to be sold, or if you're doing a lot of your own buying and selling and you want to be able to leverage, I'll say, the commissions as like a negotiating tool, because you're either going to earn it or you can negotiate with the seller of the property on how to mix it, like how to leverage that for negotiations, it might be worth it. But the other time I will say it's worth it, at least like in our case personally, Brian still works a W-2 job and he makes a good income in his W-2 job. And as a real estate professional, we get real estate professional status because we are agents. So there's a lot of tax benefits with being a real estate professional and having a significant other that has a W-2 income. We get a lot of write-offs and tax benefits because of that particular thing. So in that regard, even if I did nothing with real estate, like agent stuff, and just did the investing stuff and still did real estate related work and got the status, it would pay for itself in just the tax savings from Brian's W-2 job, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you bring up some good points. I think it also really depends on what you're trying to do with your license, right? Like we have our friend Alejandro who has his license mainly to just have access to the MLS and be the first offer, right? If a property comes to the market, he's literally like either touring it or giving her offer within the first 5 hours. That alone can help. One thing that I really liked about being an agent before I became an investor is getting familiar with all the paperwork. There's Maryland, there's a lot of paperwork that goes with writing a contract and a lot of disclosures and things like that. Being familiar with the process, with appraisals, home inspections, getting relationships with people that are in the business. You might be able to get pocket listings. That's actually how I bought my primary house that I'm in right now. So there's definitely benefits to being an agent, but like you said, there is a cost, like monetary cost. So if you're not actually helping people buy and sell, then you have to be getting the benefits somewhere else, because otherwise I don't think it's worth it.
Yeah, I agree. That's actually a really good point. There's another person, Sean, who helps us with the Arlington Cash Flow Breakfast Club. He's a lender, but he actually has his agent license, and it's for access to the tools. That's how he utilizes it. It's not to buy and sell properties at all. It's to have access to the agent tools that we have access to as agents.
100%. So one question, we're going to move a little like technical questions, because we had a few people DM.
Wait, you didn't answer. Why don't you think more agents are investing?
Oh, that's a great question. I think a lot of agents don't really understand the investing side, right? They hear wholesalers, they hear investors, and they're like, oh, you're just trying to buy a house from under somebody. And they don't understand the numbers. They don't understand construction costs. They don't understand, what it costs to get a property market ready. And there's a lot to it. And that's why we do our education, our monthly masterminds about real estate, just to kind of, because honestly, it's a whole different world, the real estate investing and the real estate agent, right? The traditional home buyer. We realize the traditional home buyer buys a property maybe every 5 to 7 years, whereas investors can do that in 1 year. So to answer your question, why don't I think more agents? I think a lot of them get caught up in the day-to-day. Being an agent is a lot of work, right? You're doing showings, you're writing offers, you're in your car, and sometimes they might not just have time to actually go out and maybe educate themselves, or at least I'm putting myself in their shoes. And that's why they're like, hey, I don't have time to invest in real estate. I have bills and things like that. But, the more you educate yourself on that side, you realize there's different avenues and you can build relationships with people. You can actually find different avenues of how you as an agent can be an investor yourself. I don't know. What would you say?
I agree. I think a lot of it has to do with they're chasing their next transaction. So when they get with an investor, they're like, ooh, that's going to be a buy and a sell. And if I just keep pushing them houses, I'm going to have these transactions. And so they're so focused on the transaction, they're not stopping to be like, wait a minute, this guy's making like 50 grand, 75 grand flipping these houses. And I'm making my commission, which is great. But why, why can't I be the one that's actually doing the deal instead of this other person? So I think some of it is that it's the hyper fixation. Like you were saying, they need to pay bills. So they're focused on the transaction that's in front of them. And they're not thinking like longer term. What is that? What am I going to do to generate wealth? What am I going to do to just get out of this rat race of chasing transactions? And I think a lot of it too is just this is going to sound terrible, uneducated. They don't I think you said this, they don't understand real estate investing. They think they do because they work with investors, but they don't understand the formulas. They don't understand what goes into it. They don't understand even the tax benefits. Like when I hear agents at different meetings, and sometimes we have tax consultants every year when people do business planning at their brokerages. And it's like, oh, I paid like $20,000 in taxes. And my brain explodes because I'm like, oh my God, why didn't you just buy like a rental property or like figure out how to not pay $20,000 in taxes using real estate when it's right in front of you? So I think there is just there's not enough education around it, and it's not talked about in circles. Like I feel like we talk about it all the time. So I feel like everybody must know about it. But honestly, when you step outside of our like circles, it's not something that people talk about a whole lot. And so I think they just don't understand it. They don't know how it works. And they're so focused on transactions that they just don't take the time to look up and realize what an amazing tool real estate investing can be for them.
It's so funny you bring up like the agents that are working with investors and they're doing the transaction. They're like, great, I get to help them buy it and then help them sell it. They're getting the double commission, but they're not actually realizing if it's a good, like running the numbers with investors. So all the agents who are listening, I encourage you guys, and this is something that I ended up doing down the road after I got licensed, but like just walk a property with your investor client. Hey, run me through the numbers, how much you thought this rehab cost and what did it actually cost you and how much did you make on this flip? Because if you're just doing it and doing the transaction, yes, you're getting some commission, which is great. But I think actually running through the numbers and doing it and actually seeing it makes it more tangible. And you're like, okay, how can I maybe do that on the next one? Or if I see a deal like that, how can I tackle that or bring partners in that it would make sense for me? And just piggybacking on you, there's so many tax incentives for real estate professionals. We're not tax advisors, right? So make sure you talk to your CPA. But, if you are an agent, you are technically a real estate professional on the IRS status, and owning rental property, you can potentially offset your active income with that. So such a great tool.
Yeah, I agree. And then one more thing, and then we can move on from this topic. This is like a heated topic. No, because you brought up something when you were talking about walking the property with the investor and learning from the investor is this also changes how the investor sees you. Now you're not just a deal finder or a bird dog or whatever they want to call you. Then at that, when they realize you're actually like interested in the numbers and you're interested in understanding how it works, there may be deals that this investor, you can actually go in and partner with them on some of these investments. If you bring the deal, then maybe you can be like, I found the deal. I want to partner with you on this. And if they see that you're genuinely like understanding what they're doing, then they're much more likely to be like, yeah, let's partner on it versus just seeing you as a bird dog or a deal finder. Like that's a different perception.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we talk about this all the time, right? You want to provide value to your mentors, even though they're clients or investors. They're doing things, whether they're fix and flippers or fix and hold or whatever they're doing as investors. Talk to them about their numbers and see why it's beneficial for them. Maybe they're just buying properties to help offset their tax burden. And it doesn't really look like a good investment for you, but they're writing off a lot of money, especially with all these new tax bills and bonus depreciation. Maybe you can just learn. I think in those beginning stages, a lot of agents just need to learn a little bit more about that side.
Yes, And don't be afraid to submit offers that are under market price. That's the other thing I've learned is, aside from asking an agent if they know what a buy box is, another question to ask an agent to know if they're really investor friendly is if they feel comfortable submitting offers below market, what the market is calling for as far as pricing goes, because there's a lot of agents that are like almost embarrassed to do that. But I think that's because they don't understand, okay, if it's sitting there, it's clearly not selling for the price that they want. There's got to be a reason. So I will say that's another good question to ask an agent. But as an agent that's interested in investing, don't be afraid to submit those lowball offers. There's a reason why they're there. If they're not insulting, they're not low enough.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what our mentor said. The first offer has got to be, you're almost embarrassed to say it. But that's the investing side, right?
Yeah.
So we're
All
gonna,
right. What's the next question?
I was going to shift gears a little because we did have a question and we talked a little bit about taxes, but we're not CPAs. So we're going to talk a little bit about interest rates, and neither one of us are lenders. Neither one of us are economists. And I know you just came back from BPCon, but somebody asked, do you think interest rates are going to go down the next year? I'm sure you've heard people like, hey, I'm just going to wait till it goes down, and that's when I'm thinking of buying. What would you say to those people?
Okay, so if you follow Bigger Pockets at all, I know you do, so you know who Dave Meyer is. I don't know if he's technically an economist, but he does a lot of the market data deli. He does a lot of the data analysis for markets and for Bigger Pockets, and he talked about it. He talked about different potential scenarios that could happen, like with the government and everything that's going on. Could someone be put in place of Jerome Powell come spring, that they force rates to come down? Sure, that may be something that happens, but I think what a lot of people don't realize is that if rates drop drastically again, like they did during COVID, we're going to end up in an even bigger inflationary problem, because that's part of what caused all of this inflation in the first place. That money was so cheap. It was just coming out of the printing press. So personally, I mean, I think for economic health reasons and based off of what I've heard experts say, I don't think so. I think it's going to stay pretty level. I think the 6 to 7% range is where we're going to float, and just accept that's what it is. Because the other thing too is if it did drop drastically, prices are going to go up. People are going to pay more. So you're going to pay more one way or another, whether it's in a higher listing price because of competition or because of interest rates. What they talked about being the most likely scenario, what Dave Meyer said he thought the most likely scenario was going to be was what he called the great stall. So he basically said that he thinks the market rates are going to stay right about where they are. Affordability is still going to stay like not viable, and affordability is almost non-existent now. He thinks it's going to take years before like affordability kind of levels off and like income starts to catch up, and that kind of like it becomes more affordable again. So he thinks things are just kind of flatline, and there's going to be sales. It's going to be more of like a buyer's market or more of a like normal market where buyers do have some incentives. And he was actually recommending for people to like underwrite scared. Like be very conservative with your underwriting. If the deal doesn't pencil out, don't force it. There's going to be other deals out there because properties are going to come on the market and there just isn't as much demand, whether it's because of fear, because of interest rates, for various reasons in our economy. But as far as rates go, I don't think they're going to go down. They're definitely not going down to 2 or 3% unless something catastrophic happens. And at that point, we've got other problems.
So today we're recording mid-October. I just looked at it. It's at 6.27. So it's a little less than what it was earlier in the year. But like you said, I agree. It's also going to stay around that hover around that 6 to 7%. But regarding interest rates and affordability, I actually talked about this yesterday in our Cash Flow Breakfast Club, is, if you look historically at interest rates in the US, yes, it seems high, like 6 to 7% seems high compared to the time that you and I entered where it was 2, 3%, which if you look at the history, that's literally never happened. Like we call it the unicorn years, right? So everything right now seems high compared to that. But, the 6 to 7 is around the average, right? I do want to touch a little bit because you mentioned affordability, and I think people are getting more creative on ways that they can buy properties, right? So yes, finding properties that cash flow, that meet that 1% rule are harder to find. It's just the truth. But if you're getting creative with your actual strategy of whether you're house hacking like myself and Jessica, or whether you decide to do the co-living strategy where you're renting by the room, or short-term rental, ways where you can increase the actual income coming in, there's ways that you can help with the affordability. And that's one of the benefits of working with somebody like Anna and I, especially if you're a first-time home buyer, first-time investor, you can look at it from a different lens because, most agents are going to look at the long-term rental rates and they're going to say, hey, this home can rent for $2,000. And that's all they're going to give you. But, if you talk to us, I can say, hey, maybe you rent out this basement as a short-term rental and you can get a little bit more income and maybe it can pencil and a deal could make sense for you in a traditional non-cash flow market. Just been on a tangent, but regarding interest rates, I see it staying stagnant as well.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. And touching on your affordability comment, I agree. Like even not for non-investors, like you were saying, first-time home buyers, we have friends, they do happen to be investors too, but they bought a property out in Chantilly, which tends to be an expensive market. I mean, all of the DMV seems to be an expensive market, but they were able to buy a single family home, multiple bedrooms, multiple baths, a decent sized home, but they are renting by the room. And so they're actually able to pay their mortgage by renting out rooms, and they have a home that's an asset that's gaining in value. They're paying down their mortgage that's going to pay for itself at some point in the future. And that's something that they likely would not have been able to do had they followed the traditional path of just buying a house and living in it themselves. It would have not. They just wouldn't have been able to afford it. And that's part of what's happening to a lot of folks. They're like, I can't afford a $5,000 mortgage payment every month. But if you get a property in a nice area that's desirable, you can get people to rent a room for $800 to $1,000, depending on the size of the room and whether it has a bathroom. And you get a couple of those in it, and you've got almost your full mortgage paid. You're paying less than you would pay for rent on an apartment, and it's a house you own.
Yeah. It all comes down to comfortability and how, if you want to make some sacrifices to help offset those housing costs. So, Anna, I always get this question from people that are like, how do you invest in real estate? I don't have hundreds and $200,000 to invest in real estate. So what are we talked about the HELOC, right? How you can leverage the equity in your home. And what would you say are some like investor loans? I think you touched on DSCR loans and hard money. Do you mind explaining what those are and how people can leverage that to buy investment properties?
Yeah. So the DSCR loan, like I mentioned before, is the debt service coverage ratio loan. They're a commercial loan. Institutions or lenders will normally lend them to an LLC. So you would have to get some kind of LLC, S Corp, something like that. But it is a loan that is not based off of the person's income. It's based off of the income that's generated by the property. And so there's certain ratios. Usually it's like a 1.0, 1.25. It depends on the lender. But essentially, like if the property is $100,000 and you make $1,000 in monthly rent, that kind of meets the ratio. That's a very simplified version. There's more to it, but that is a great way to get investment properties without using your own credit or income to qualify for the loan. They do typically have higher rates than the traditional loans. So I will say that's the downside to that. And you can get as many of those loans as you can get your hands on, unlike conventional loans where most people are limited to 10 conventional loans by like Fannie and Freddie Mac standards. And then hard money loans those are usually more short-term loans. Those are more the ones that you're getting for like a fix and flip to get a property, buy it, fix it, and sell it pretty quickly. It's usually lending institutions. I don't know if there's individuals, I guess we normally call private money lenders, but usually they have set rules and they have points and the interest rates are a little higher, but they'll loan you money for like a 12-month window instead of a 30-year window to get a property under contract. And like I said, normally you use that for a fix and flip or to buy a property, and then you have a strategy to get it into another type of loan product. That's not a loan product you would use long term.
So both of those that you just mentioned are asset-based lending, right? Mm-hmm. They're less focused of you as traditional lender, a borrower, and more so as the property, right? Regarding these, they do require a larger down payment, right? So the traditional, you can put as little as 0% with the VA loan, 3.5% because they're owner occupied, essentially less risky for the lender. So for these, you're usually doing 15, 20, 25% down for a DSCR loan. And I just want to touch on the ratio, the 1% ratio, the 1.0 ratio when you're talking about your expenses. So, if your property taxes, your mortgage payment, your principal and interest all are $1,000, then your rent has to be at least $1,000 or more to cover that. And that way, they know that your actual payment towards the lender is going to is covered by your tenants. And then regarding hard money, those rates they always fluctuate, and they're based off of, the interest rate in whatever time you're doing it. But those are higher. Like Anna mentioned, they're short term. So you don't want those out for 5, 10, 20 years. I don't know many hard money lenders that would do that, but they're ones that you're coming in, you're buying the property, you're putting that 20% down, 25% down, and they're funding the rest. And that includes rehab costs, right? So if a property needs $100K in rehab, they're funding that plus the 80% loan. And then they get paid, the interest, whether that's 10%, 12%, 15%, whatever the hard money lender's charging at that time. So it could be a win-win for, an investor there that wouldn't qualify the traditional route. And it's a win for them because they're making a good amount of interest on the property for a short term. I know you mentioned private money that can be interchanged with hard money, but those are essentially individuals that have money, that can be your rich uncle, your Uncle Phil that has a lot of money in the bank that wants to lend out money, and he knows the benefit of investing in real estate, the security of owning a tangible note, essentially. I've used private money before, and it really could be a win-win. They're making more money than they would in other investments like a stock or a CD, and you're essentially getting funded for a property that you couldn't buy normally. And I do love the private money route because it is a little bit more flexible, right? You're negotiating with an individual rather than a institution that does this as a business. So those are different ways that you can invest and fund your deals without doing the traditional, conventional and FHA loans.
Yeah. And I will say thank you for correcting me, because my dog barking, I confused the 1% rule with the DSCR ratio. So good catch on that one.
I got you.
That one up.
I just talked about that yesterday. So that's, I do want to talk about, I know we're running close on time, a cash out refinance. That sounds very technical, but for those who don't know what that is, what does that look like for somebody that wants to do a cash out refi?
In a lot of cases, that's what people do when they're doing the BRRRR strategy, which is the buy, renovate, rent, refinance, repeat. I think I got that all right.
You did it. You got 2 thumbs up.
But essentially, that's where you refinance your property and you're hoping that you have some equity in there, and the loan, you can get it for higher than if you owe, how do I say this? If you owe $100,000 and your house is really worth $200,000, you can go back and refinance it and maybe get a loan for $150,000, and then you can pay off that first mortgage back for the $100,000 and then keep the $50,000 and get cash out of the refinance. I think that's probably the simplest way, by explaining that example, is basically where your property is worth more than what you owe on it, and you're able to withdraw some of that equity in a loan. That's what I mentioned earlier, like with the HELOC. The difference there is that you're pulling that all out as a loan at once. So you're going to pay interest as soon as you get that money in the bank. There's no, like with a HELOC, you don't pay anything unless you draw it. In this case, you're paying as soon as you pull the money out. And it's usually at a higher interest rate. Like a lot of folks, I don't want to do that right now with my primary residence because interest rates are so much higher. I've got the lock-in effect going on.
That's right. That's right. But no, that's true. It's something to factor in whenever you're thinking of doing a cash out refinance, right? Essentially, you're pulling equity out, and having the cash out refinance is having cash out of your property. You're cashing out. Things to consider when you're deciding to do that is what you just said. If you have a great interest rate on your first mortgage, maybe you don't want to do that. Maybe you go the HELOC route like Anna, or you don't want to have a higher payment. So essentially, if you're doing a cash out refinance, you're swapping one mortgage for a different mortgage. And if your rates are higher at the new mortgage, your payment's going to be a little bit higher. Now, it still might make sense if you're making enough money. You're just like, hey, that's fine. I just need this money to invest somewhere else, to do whatever you want. But always be careful with why you want to do it. It's very common on the BRRRR method because you might have bought it with a hard money loan or a private money loan. So you want to essentially do the cash out refinance and have a long-term 30-year fixed mortgage and pay off the hard money or the private money loan. But always talk to your lenders and have that consultation with them before you decide you want to do that.
Yeah, because I want to make sure people understand like that money that you're getting out of a cash out refinance, that's not free money. That means you have a higher loan amount now, which is the other, aside from having a higher interest rate, you actually owe the bank more than you did before. So that's another reason your payment is higher. It's not free money. It is still a loan. You just owe them more money now.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. One thing I actually want to touch back to, I had this person that was interested in becoming a real estate agent talk about what are some write-offs you have as a real estate agent, as a real estate professional, would you say? Again, we are not tax professionals, but what would you say are some things that you can write off?
Write off? Oh, there's so many things. Hey, hold on. So we are not tax professionals. Break. So if you have, one thing is if you have an office space, like if you have a home office, and when I say that, I don't mean like a desk in the corner. It's by tax regulations. Again, I'm not an accountant or a tax professional. It has to be a room with a door. I don't know if I think it has to have access to get to the outside if it's like your home office. And so you can write off at least part of the square footage of your home if you're using your home as a home office. It's not the whole house. Some people are like, yeah, I can write off my whole house. It is literally the square footage of your office that is supposed to be written off. You can write off some incidentals like meals and trips and education if it's all centered around your job. If it's for the education, betterment, networking of generating business, like there are lots of activities like that you can also write off. Office supplies, electronic devices, like my phone is my work phone, my computer, my laptop is my laptop for work. Those kinds of things that are tools for you to do business are usually write-offable. I don't even know if that's a word, but we're going to go with it. Mileage on your vehicle, if you're using your vehicle for work purposes, or if you have just a work vehicle. Some people buy a vehicle strictly for their business. They plaster their marketing all over it. And then it becomes a tax write-off also because it is a company vehicle or it's a marketing tool. So there is a lot of little things like that you can write off, at least from the agent perspective. As an investor, then you have all of the costs of running a house that you can write off.
Yeah. And you want to touch a little bit about that? Because if you are an agent and investor like us, and for example, I'll just touch about mine. So I have a midterm rental, right? And all those furnishings that it costs to get the bed, this couch, some of the remodeling that we did to get it ready, those are all tax deductible because you bought it with intent to rent it out. You talked about the vehicle, making sure that you actually track your mileage. There's some great apps that you can use to make sure you're keeping it. I love the idea of just buying a property and putting your face on it saying, I buy houses. That can be a pretty cool tool. But there's a lot of different things that you can essentially write off. There's a lot of benefits with being an agent and investor, a real estate professional. Also, marrying somebody that's a real estate professional can also be beneficial if you're married, filed jointly. So these are all things that we've learned from our accountants. Make sure you talk to your accountants to see what type of write-offs would make sense for you.
Yes. And I will say it's like with an agent, right? Like you want to find an accountant that deals with real estate agents or real estate investing, because there are accountants that know the tax law. But then there are some accountants that their primary focus is certain types of businesses, real estate being one of them. And they truly understand a lot of the loopholes or the tax benefits or the way to utilize the tax law to benefit you the most. So I will say it's the same with attorneys. It's the same with with accountants. It's the same with real estate agents. It's a different breed of animal when you find those specialties that are with those jobs that are specialized in real estate, because they can help you maximize the benefits of being a real estate agent and or investor.
Exactly. One thing that I wanted to ask you is, somebody asked this, what publications, news sources do you like to read or keep a pulse on to keep an eye on, like real estate in the local market? Is there anything that you focus on?
So I do. So I don't know if regular people can see it because it might be on the external facing page, but like Bright MLS, which is the MLS that we use here in the DMV, they do weekly reports. So you can go in there and look at market data, but they also have a specific segment because of the volatility that's been going on in the DMV, where they specifically look at the DMV market, not the whole East Coast. So I do try to read that weekly to see, like, county by county, city by city, like what's happening with price reductions, are things sitting longer, days on market, things like that. So that's always good. I get articles from different like news publications, like just regular like New York Times, Washington Post, things like that. But then I also get them from like bigger pockets. They write a lot of articles that talk about what's going on, at least on the real estate market front. They do more of like national level. So I will say that is a difference there from the Bright articles, that a lot of the news that you hear when it comes to real estate and investing in the market, it's at a national level, which may not necessarily apply to your specific market, because some markets are more resilient than others. Some markets are tanking more than others.
Yeah.
So I would say probably I use the Bright MLS, so the benefit of being an agent. I use bigger pockets. Now I'm going to have to go through. I'm going to ask you the same question as I go through my phone and look at all the emails that I get from different sources.
Yeah. So one easy one is becoming friends with agents, right? So that the ones that are local. Anna mentioned that real estate news is very hyper local. So if you can, I love listening to podcasts. You mentioned a few articles, but I listen to a lot of podcasts. Bigger Pockets has some great ones that talk about the national ones. So there's the Real Estate Rookie podcast that I love, the On the Market podcast with Dave Meyer. He talks about more of the economic side of real estate, and it's geared towards real estate investing, but he has some great guests that come on. What else? The Housing Wire, that's mainly about like mortgages and things like that. So those are all accounts that like I follow on Instagram, I listen to daily, and I'm trying to think of other ones. I put you on the spot now. I put myself on the spot.
I know, right? I was going to say Mortgage News Daily is an app that I have on my phone that I look at regularly to just see what the rates are doing right now. And that's not, you don't have to be an agent to download that app and see where rates are today. And it'll tell you if they've gone up or down, or a snippet about like why that's happening. So that's a good app to have as well. And you touched on Dave Meyer's like On the Market. That's a good one. Like the stuff that I talked about earlier in that episode about the Great Stall. If you listen to like his last several podcasts over the last couple months, you'll probably pick up most of the points that he brought up at the Bigger Pockets conference.
Yeah. And then one, I guess our final question, because I'm looking at the clock and we're running close on time, but it's from the same gentleman that it sounds like he's thinking of getting his real estate license. And he was wondering where is our best source of getting clients. He says, I imagine referrals, but I'm curious if social media and other avenues have been useful for you.
Oh, man. So I will say when I first became an agent, open houses, like if you're sitting in on open houses, that's a great way to get buyers that are coming in that they're a warm lead. They're coming into the open house for a reason. Yeah. So open houses for sure. Rentals are another one that I've actually found useful, because a lot of agents that list rentals don't necessarily want to deal with tenants. So I connected myself with those types of agents. So a lot of times I will take their rental leads, and maybe that rental, it's a couple $100. It's not a big deal, but I've had a couple of rental leads actually convert into buyers like following year or something like that. So that's a good way to fill your pipeline. I think. I agree with social media. I think putting yourself out there just so people know that you're an agent is a good way to stay in touch with your sphere of influence, with your network, so that they know to rely on you. Because from my previous career now, when I made the transition, people didn't see me as an agent. They saw me as Anna, who worked for the Department of Navy, who works at NAVC, So it took a while for people to see that change in me and see that person like, oh, she's a real estate agent. She's a real estate professional. She's an investor. So I think social media is another great tool. And a lot of the stuff is not immediate. Like this isn't like you're going to go in and they're going to be knocking down your door. Like you need to put in the legwork, and some of them will come right away. But for the most part, these are like relationships and like things that you're going to have to do repeatedly over time to start building that momentum in your pipeline.
Yeah, 100%. I think when you're starting out, it takes a little bit of time. And I remember when I started out, they were like, oh, you gotta make videos, you gotta put yourself out there. And believe it or not, Ann and I, before we did this podcast, I don't want to speak for you, but I was very timid on trying to put my face out there. I was like, what if I say something stupid and, people make fun of me? But, since we've, consistently put out stuff on social media, we talk every week, but once we started recording it and having stuff on Instagram and social media, I've gotten a lot of leads and feedback of people that are just having a conversation with us. So I really try and double down on the consistency of social media because it's free. It's things that we do anyway. And you never want to be a secret agent. So I'm talking specifically to the agents right now. You don't want to be a secret agent. Now, you want to be organic, right? You don't want to just push real estate, because then people are going to be like, oh, this guy's being inauthentic. He's just trying to get
used
leads.
Car salesman.
Used car salesman. You'll sound sleazy, but weave it in there, right? I like to play soccer. I have my Stevenson soccer shirt on. One post will be about soccer. One post will be about this. And then I'll tie in me at my meetup last night, or me doing a showing of a really ugly home. And that starts the conversation. They're like, okay, hey, Nico is still the same Nico that I know in high school that was having fun with me, but he's actually in real estate now. I encourage people that are new in real estate, leverage social media, leverage your sphere of influence. Make sure you're telling people that you're actually an agent. And that's going to take some time, right? I don't want to say nobody, but not a lot of people are going to trust the brand new licensed agent. So maybe you have to leverage other agents and do, like you said, open houses, maybe do some showings for other agents before you actually start getting your own clients. It does take a little bit of time. And I would say whatever marketing way you do, double down and be consistent is what I would say.
I agree. Consistency is what's going to get you everywhere. You can still hear me, right?
I can hear you. Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. Do we want to answer any more questions, or is this going to be it? Because we're like at an hour. I know like probably 20 minutes of this is us, like, and the dog. And
I don't know. Did you have one more question for me on this list, or anything that came to top of mind?
Let me think. The only thing I guess I would ask you is what's your 2026 goals, like investment wise? What do you see yourself doing in the next 12 months when it comes to real estate?
Such a good question. And I love goal setting. I think we had a whole episode about goal setting way back.
At the beginning of the year?
Episodes. No, honestly, I think maybe last year. Anyway, so Anna does a lot of out-of-state investing, or Southern Virginia out-of-state. And I know why people invest out-of-state, to get stronger cash flow. And it's something that I've been circling around for quite some time. So I think my goal, if not later this year or early next year, is to get my first out-of-state market. I'm still trying to figure out which market I want to go to, but I would like to get one that, whether it's a BRRRR or whether it's just a traditional rent-ready home, I do want to diversify a little bit and go out to a different market. So that would be my real estate goal for 2020. Maybe this year, we're mid-October. Once my flip resells, we can think about the next property, because I do want to continue building this rental portfolio.
Yeah. So 2026.
Yeah, realistically 2026.
I think Brian and I, one of the things we took away from Bigger Pockets is we need to sit down and redefine our buy box, because I've told people this too. Like, we had a buy box, and it morphs and it changes as you get more experience and you learn things and you like see different strategies. So I think we need to redefine our buy box first, but based off of what I think we're going to do, I put on my like vision board for like 12 months from now is pick up 4 new properties. I don't know what they're going to look like, whether they're going to be more duplexes or whatever it is. But one of the things that we've been toying with is down in that Southern Virginia market. We've talked about it before. There's lots of city-owned lots that have been for sale, or that are just kind of sitting there and they're waiting for someone to come up with a plan. And because of networking, the magic of networking, I realized I have someone in my network that owns or is partial owner of a modular house company. Like, they build modular homes.
Yeah.
You know this person too, but I'll tell you later. So they build modular homes. They own part of this company that builds modular homes down in like Florida. And so I'm like, I wonder what the cost of the modular home would be if we can come up with a plan that financially makes sense to create affordable housing on these lots that we can buy from the city for pennies on the dollar, because they just want the tax assessed value for the land, which in a lot of cases is $5,000 or $10,000 for the land. And then if we can get these modular homes on it and create affordable housing that just economically makes sense, I think that's something we're definitely going to look into in the next 12 months to see if that's feasible, to try to like win-win, like build affordable housing in this community that we really like and generate some income from properties that are cash flowing in an appreciating market. And the other thing that we're doing is Brian's actually working as we speak on plans to build an ADU in our backyard of our primary residence, so that at some point we can rent it out, whether it's a short-term rental, a mid-term rental. When the kids leave and we decide to travel the world and we rent out this house, and we can rent out the ADU as well, and just kind of increase the income that we can generate from our primary residence.
I love it. Yeah, ADUs can be so powerful on ways that you can just increase income on property that was already there, essentially. So that's pretty cool. We'll definitely have to talk more about the modular homes because I've been curious about that as well. So that's awesome.
Yeah, so I'm excited about it. And then if you don't know what ADU is, it's an accessory dwelling unit or auxiliary dwelling unit. I've heard it called both, but it's basically like an extra little house, little building that you build where people can stay and live, like an in-law suite or like, but it's, yeah.
Yeah. Make sure you check with your zoning to make sure it's allowed in your area before you build an extra unit on your property.
Yes, you have to get it all permitted and approved. And actually, again, back to the Dave Meyer talk at BPCon, he actually showed a list of all the different counties around the country. Like, it's become more and more accepted to have ADUs being approved. Alexandria was on his list. Arlington was on his list, amongst other places in the country, because housing shortages are a real thing. And they're trying to figure out how to do the infill housing, and ADUs fill that need.
Love it. Love it.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you for tuning in to another episode, a Q&A episode. We appreciate everybody who submitted questions. We'll probably do this in another month or two just to have these conversations. We encourage you guys to reach out to us because we appreciate your feedback, first of all, and we like having these questions because it makes it super conversational. Just Anna and I, we love our guests, but I love hearing from the audience. That's going to do it for another episode. Please share, subscribe, comment, DM. Everything you can do, reach out to Anna and I. You can reach out to me at N Garcia Official, Nico Garcia, and you can reach out to Anna at
I'm at Anna Bialik _ realtor on Instagram, and Anna Bialik everywhere else. That's one N, not two.
Cool. Tune in to the next episode. Thanks, guys.